Howdy, this is the Views from the Shop podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Friday, January 30th, 2026, and I wish you a very, very, very happy Yodel for Your Neighbors Day. On today's show, it's Ohio State taking on Wisconsin in Madison tomorrow. The Buckeyes and Badgers face off in a big game for each of these teams. Wisconsin already has their key signature win. Of course, that came at Michigan a couple of weeks prior. Ohio State right now still looking for that top tier quad one victory. Northwestern in and out of quad one. So if Ohio State can beat Wisconsin in this one on the road, it would be a huge win for Ohio State and one that stays in the quad one most likely for the end of the season, unless something magically bad happens to Wisconsin. So on today's show, we will break this game down in its absolute entirety. We'll talk about the Wisconsin background. We'll get into their offense and defense before we get into two keys to the game. I think it's very simple. There is a very clear path for how Ohio State can beat Wisconsin and upset them, as the Badgers will be favored in this one. Not by a long shot, but they will be favored nonetheless. And then I will get into my prediction for this game as well. I know you're probably tired of hearing me say it, but I have to say it because there's new listeners on every show. And I just want to make sure you know, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, please like the video. These are the types of shows that get a lot of traction on YouTube. So I ask that you like the video and help me out there. And also comment, what's your score prediction from the game? What are your thoughts on this game? Things like that. Comment on YouTube. If you're on podcast, give a 5-star review. Can't let the Nut House win. And of course, there's a Substack, Views from the Shop podcast.substack.com. You can go there. It's linked in the episode description. Go there. It's the only Ohio State basketball exclusive hub, publishing content, news, opinions, all those types of things. Consider it push notifications for Ohio State basketball exclusively. You should get there as well. Of course, there's a paid version if you're into that. If you're not, that's totally fine. So the Buckeyes and Badgers are going to get after it here on Saturday, 2 o'clock on Fox. So this will be a nationally televised game and most likely a game that a lot of people are into. I always forget to check at the start of the show, but if we go to January 31st and we go time and we go 2 o'clock, what's Ken Palm have to say about these 2 o'clock games? Well, we got SMU and Louisville. I think that more fans will watch Ohio State and Wisconsin. You've also got Texas and Oklahoma. Might be going in and out of that one too. Other than that, North Carolina plays, but they're playing they're playing Georgia Tech. So as far as the 2 o'clock games go, this is going to be one that a lot of eyes are on if you're a college basketball fan. And remember, at this point, college football is over. This is going to be a time where naturally fans look at college basketball again because the Super Bowl, there's nothing going on this weekend. So you have the Super Bowl coming up next weekend. Right now, there's really nothing on in terms of sports other than the NBA, of the major sports. So fans will be tuning in more to college basketball at this point in the year. So these two teams will have some eyes on them. As we look at Wisconsin so far this year, 15-6 and 7-4 in the Big Ten. In the non-conference, they had their rears handed to them at the hands of the Mormons over there at BYU. Just as a fun fact, I posted this in the insider subscriber chat on Substack. That could have been Ohio State. That was a game that BYU and Ohio State were going to play in, and Jake Diebler said, "Yeah, we're good. We'll pass on that." So Wisconsin took the game instead, and they got destroyed. So probably not a bad idea for Jake Diebler to decline that one. Outside of that, in the non-conference, not the strongest resume. They don't have a win over a Duke or an Arizona type of team like that. Obviously, no one has beaten Arizona at this point, but they did top Providence by scoring over 100 points in that game. They lost to TCU, like everyone in the Big Ten has played TCU at this point. Got a win over Marquette. Again, not the greatest non-conference resume, but that's fine because they're winning games in the Big Ten. They're the only team to beat Michigan so far this season. Nebraska came close, but not quite able to do it. They won 5 Big Ten games in a row. 3 of them came against 3 bottom teams of the conference, but regardless, it's Big Ten play. Winning 5 in a row is huge at any point in the season. Most recently, they lost to USC, and then you probably watched the game just as well as I did. Wisconsin was getting crushed by Minnesota. of all teams. They didn't score 10 points until the 6:14 mark in the first half. And after 28 first half points, they kind of turned on a little bit there toward the end of the first half. They scored 50. They dropped a 50 piece on Minnesota in the second half and ended up winning that game. So right now, Wisconsin, 43rd in net, 41 in Ken Pom, 36 in Bart Torvik. I will say, I'll caveat that with I got these numbers on Thursday night. So these Wisconsin may be a little bit different at this point, but 43rd net, 41st Ken Pom, 36 Bart Torvik. Right now, really in a similar spot as Ohio State. Wisconsin's record is better. They've got more wins in the Big Ten, and the resume is a little bit stronger, but they're not shoo-ins to be in the NCAA tournament at this point. They're beating the teams they should beat, other than TCU, and they're losing to the teams most likely that they should probably be losing to, other than Michigan. So very similar to Ohio State in that regard. Greg Gard, the head coach there still. This is his 11th season there in Madison, a former associate head coach there at Wisconsin for a couple of generations, basically, before getting the keys handed to him and leading the program at Wisconsin. If you're looking for someone who has done what you want Jake Diebler to do, look at Greg Gard. Wisconsin as well, they haven't really dealt with injuries. They've missed some guys here and there, but the availability report against Minnesota, it was spotless. They did have Alexis Biliauskas hurt against Minnesota. He played 5 minutes and did not return. He's not the biggest contributor by any stretch for Wisconsin, so that's something to keep an eye on there, but clearly their depth in a better spot than Ohio State's, as the Buckeyes without Josh Ojambona, without Brandon Knoll. And then we'll see what happens with Gabe Cupps, Matthew Grujic, and Christoph Tilley. Those are three guys in Knoll, in Cupps, and in Tilley that you really, regardless of your opinion of them, you want them at least on the bench and available for Ohio State. So we'll see what happens with them. I'll talk about what I know about those situations later on the show. Let's get into the Wisconsin offense, and it's a Wisconsin offense that is exactly what you would expect from Wisconsin at this point. They are pretty much the same offense, it feels like, year in and year out. They've got some shooters. They like to take the three ball, pretty good at spreading the ball around and sharing. So this year, 82.8 points per game, 45% from the field. They're shooting at 34.6% from the three-point line, and they're 38th, according to Ken Pom, in adjusted offensive efficiency. I would liken them to the spread offense in football, I suppose. Hear me out. Spread offense, you're taking shots, passing the ball at a high volume, prioritizing spacing, combinations of routes to get guys open downfield, and that's kind of Wisconsin at this point. They are, when it comes to taking shots at a high volume, by shots, I mean like deep shots, you're shooting from three at a very high volume. We'll talk about that. They've got a really, really high pace. We'll talk about that as well. And the assist rate, they share a bunch. They're able to pepper the ball to several different people, kind of similar to a spread offense, I guess you could say. So the offense is 70th percentile in terms of pace so far this year. So they will move the ball up and down the floor. They'll run in transition. They do want to prioritize that. But what they prioritize more than anything offensively is the three-point attempt rate. They're 9th in the nation in three-point attempt rate. John Blackwell, he goes nuts from deep, averaging 7 triples attempted per game. He's making a really good 38% as well. So with a lot of volume, he's hitting the three-point shots. Now, that's no John Mobley Jr. over the past 4 games, but obviously it's still very good. They have 5 players right now averaging 4 three-point attempts per game or more. I did have to round up for one guy who was at 3.8, but it is what it is. You look at Nolan Winter. He's a 7-footer. He's not included in that group, but he can still hit shots from deep. He's taken 3 per game. The best shooters here, Braden Carrington, who comes off the bench, Blackwell, Winter, and Biliauskas, who I already mentioned. We'll see if he can go in this one, but overall, 31.4 three-pointers attempted per game for Wisconsin. As a team, though, they're not spectacular necessarily from deep. It's how they beat Michigan, but they've kind of lived and died by the 3 ball so far this season. But overall, as you look at Wisconsin offense, the number one thing you have to remember is they are going to shoot a bunch of threes. Ohio State's defense is going to have to be ready to defend the three-point shot. And, of course, that 2-3 zone. How much does Ohio State throw that zone at Wisconsin as they extend it out? Which At times, it does lead to open threes, especially in the corner, but more than anything, it seems to lead to open shots in the paint and short corner, backside, weak side, things like that. So we'll see what Ohio State does in this one there. The assist rate I mentioned, 83rd percentile in college basketball. Nick Boyd, he leads away with 3.6 assists per game. He had 9 assists against Rutgers, dropped 7 dimes against Providence, and he had 6 against Michigan. Those are his highs so far this year. You look at Andrew Rode, Blackwell again, they contribute there. Nolan Winter, he's a really, really good passer for being a 7-footer, and he's continued to get playing time at Wisconsin now in his 3rd year as a junior. And on the flip side, when it comes to turnovers, they're averaging just 10 turnovers per game. Their turnover rate is 94th percentile in college basketball. So it's a team that's shooting a bunch of threes. They're making them at an okay clip. They don't struggle with turnovers. They share the ball really, really well. So it's a good, crisp, clean offense here from Wisconsin. Last note, as far as their overall style, they're not looking to back you down and ground and pound. It's not 3 yards and a cloud of dust here from Wisconsin. They take just 29.6 two-pointers per game. That is 7th percentile in college basketball, and that's really low, especially given their pace. So the percentage of shots that they take that are 2-pointers, very, very low. Looking at their overall shot selection, only 30.5% of shots come at the rim and just 12.3% of shots come in the paint. So it's a low percentage from the mid-range as well, as you would imagine. So they're not taking a lot of shots from inside the three-point line. Where they really want to shoot it from is from the break to the top of the key. That's where they're looking to take their threes. So that's exactly, again, Ohio State's 2-3 zone. They may give up some open looks in the corner at times. You're not generally giving up a bunch of open looks from the 2-3 zone, at least that I can remember. That's from the top of the key to the break. So you'll be looking at, a lot of threes from the top of the key, from the wing. That's where Wisconsin wants to shoot. That's where Ohio State would allow you not to shoot for the most part. As you look at individual players for Wisconsin, Nick Boyd is the first player I'll mention because he's scoring the most points per game so far this year for the Badgers. Quite a surprise, I would say. They got him from San Diego State. He was scoring 13.5 points per game for San Diego State last year. Shout out Micah Parrish. And now this year, he's kind of exploded. 20 points per game, 3.6 assists per game, 3.6 rebounds per game, and 48% from the field. And although he is a good three-point shooter, he really likes to get it inside. The play style is very similar to a Tariq Francis at Rutgers or a Jason Edwards now at Providence, if you're familiar with his game. Super high usage, really, really good assist rate, really, really good shooting inside, and he can hit threes. He just doesn't take them quite as much. Not a lot of turnover struggles as well with Nick Boyd. He hasn't scored less than 11 points in a game this season, so he's going to be a guy who gets his shots up and he does score. He had 21 against Minnesota. He had 29 against USC, scored 11 against Penn State the game before that, 32 against Rutgers, 11 against Minnesota in earlier January, and then 20 plus against Michigan, UCLA, and Purdue. So against these really good teams, he's able to score. He's able to score against anyone. He's most likely going to get his against Ohio State. Can the Buckeyes just settle him in a little bit and get 14 out of him? I think if you do that, that's probably seen as a win for Ohio State. Also have to talk about John Blackwell, a name you're used to hearing here for Wisconsin. He had an excellent season last year for the Badgers. Now this season, 18.4 points per game, 2.2 assists per game, and 5.1 rebounds per game. Again, it's bombs away for him from deep. His 2-point game, certainly not as strong, and he's not as multifaceted, I guess I would say, as Nick Boyd, but you certainly look at him as a really strong shooter. He was 5 of 10 from deep in a game against Northwestern this year, 4 of 9 against Minnesota, the first game they played against Minnesota, and then, 4 of 9 against Minnesota in the last game, 5 of 7 against Minnesota the first time they played, and 4 of 8 against Michigan. So he's had some games this year similar to John Mobley Jr., where you're just going crazy from deep, you're hitting them. That's Blackwell. For him, I think Ohio State has to hope that he's not hot, because he's had some ugly games. And I'll actually pull these up here. He's had some games where he went 1 of 7 against USC. That was just 2 games ago. 1 of 9 against UCLA. Wisconsin still won that one. 1 of 6 against Providence. 1 of 5 against BYU. 5 of 6 against whatever a SIUE is. If you know, you know, I guess. But overall, He has some boob games, he has some bust games, but I would say if you can get a bust game rather than a boom game, good. Good for Ohio State. Nolan Winter, I'll talk about as well. Another player, just like Blackwell, just continues to play solid basketball, get a little bit better each year, and stay at the same school. Stay at Wisconsin. I think that's impressive. I wish more programs were like that. He's scoring 13.9 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, really good rebounder, 95th percentile in 2-point percentage, and he still makes 35% of his shots from deep. Here's the question when it comes to Winter. It's kind of points back to Ohio State. Is Christoph Tilly going to play in this game? So, look, I think there's a chance he plays. I think there's a chance he doesn't. That's really novel of me, I know, but I would say at this point, with what I've heard with his practicing and even players being surprised that he's not able to go when Ohio State played Penn State, I would lean toward him playing in this one against Wisconsin. And if he can, he's the perfect matchup against Nolan Winter. If not, you're going to see more Ivan Nagovin on Winter or on a center and starting. And I don't necessarily think that's the worst matchup for Nagovin. He's not, Nolan Winter is not the mast. He's not the Tilly. He's not the Mara who can grab the ball at the 3-point line, drive and score. While he can score from the 3-point line, if he is scoring, a lot of times it's either as a shooter from deep or he's already got the ball at the block and he's going to make some moves. Now, he can hit shots for sure, but I think in terms of style, it's a player that Nagovin should be able to hang with at least a little bit. So that's one matchup that I keep an eye on. Can Christoph Tilly go? We will see. We will see together. And then outside of that, Wisconsin, they've just got plenty of guys. They got plenty of dudes who can score. Austin Rapp gets used in just over 20% of possessions. Already talked about Carrington. He's a good 3-point shooter. So that's the offense for Wisconsin. The defense for the Badgers, they're allowing 74.7 points per game so far this year. 43.9% from the field is their defense. 32.6% of shots from the 3-point line go in. And they're 59th in adjusted defensive efficiency. Number one note for Wisconsin, they're 11th in the nation in average height. They play with two players who are near 7 foot. You look at Winter, he's exactly 7 foot. You look at Rapp, he's 6'10". Guards and Boyd and Blackwell, they're not big whatsoever. But outside of that, everyone has pretty above average height. So you look at Carrington, 6'5". Andrew Rhodes, 6'6". Billy Auskis is 6'10". They don't really use this size, though, to turn it into blocks or to turn it into turnovers the way that you would imagine. They're really below average in steal rate and in block rate. Teams are below average, but barely, but below average at the rim against them, and they actually shoot it pretty well in the paint. So what you would assume with a team that plays with this type of size is they're either blocking shots or they're getting out in passing lanes, making it hard on you and forcing turnovers, or they are blocking shots, and if not blocking shots, defending the rim and the paint really, really well. They're not bad there, but they're not special in the paint. So neither of the things you expect with the team with a high average height is what you get in terms of defense. They allow 31 paint points per game. It's a pretty solid number. Obviously, Ohio State, they need to work here. This is where they've been really good recently for the Buckeyes, actually the whole season, really, in terms of shooting and scoring from the paint. If we look at their paint scoring overall, they had 34 paint points against Penn State. That's really good. 24 against Michigan. They lost. That's not good. 46 against Minnesota. 28 against UCLA. Not great, but still won the game. 38, 34, 34 again. So they have done a good job getting into the paint and scoring this year. What they really want to do more than anything is score from inside the 3-point line. So that's a matchup to watch in this one. Another note on this defense for Wisconsin, they are one of the best defensive rebounding teams in all of America. Their 74.7% defensive rebounding rate is 12th in the nation right now. It leads to them only allowing 9.8 second chance points per game, and they're 24th in the nation in offensive rebounds allowed. So as you might imagine here, Nolan Winter is a big help. He does a lot of damage, but their second and third best defensive rebounders are guards in Blackwell and in Boyd. So very similar to Ohio State, where you see Bruce Thornton get a lot of rebounding on the defensive glass. That's what you see from Wisconsin. But the Buckeyes, they've had a string of success here, actually, over their past couple of games. Low production against Penn State, but 12, 13, 13, 12, 17, and 13 in their games before Penn State in terms of offensive rebounding. Again, the question here is, can Christoph Tilly go? He averages 1.6 offensive rebounds per game. That's just behind the team's best offensive rebounder and Devin Royal at 1.7. So Puff Johnson, can he continue to help here as he gets more playing time and acclimated with Ohio State, kind of replacing some of that Brandon Knoll production? But this is a game, again, where Nagovin, I mean, he's been a good rebounder for Ohio State. Can he grab a couple of offensive rebounds in this game, even if Tilly can't go? That's going to go a long way for Ohio State having an opportunity to win this contest. The losses, they have come in part for Wisconsin due to second chance scoring allowed in their losses this year. They've allowed 12, 17, 16, 10, 4, and 15 second chance points. All of those numbers are 59th percentile or worse, other than allowing just the 4 in the loss against TCU. But if you take out TCU, you take out Nebraska, where they allowed 10. That's 44th percentile or worse in all of those games in college basketball this season. So it's something to keep an eye on for Ohio State. Can the Buckeyes score here on second chance opportunities, where Wisconsin has been really, really good this year? If Ohio State can find opportunities and find some ways to chip away and grab an offensive rebound there and score here and all of that, that helps their ability to win this game as well. But overall, I think Ohio State, they're going to have plenty of possessions, plenty of clean shots, plenty of opportunities like that, where Wisconsin, they're not going to turn you over. They're not going to block shots. They don't have a great number in terms of dead ball turnovers either. So I think this is a game where both offenses can settle in, both offenses can score, and I think this is going to be a pretty high-scoring contest in the end. Keys to the game in this one. I've got 2 for Ohio State. I think especially the second one is probably the biggest key to the game. We could probably just have one key to the game. I'm going with 2. Second one's big. We'll start with the first. Buckeyes have got to dominate in the paint. This is where they have been really, really good this year. Wisconsin, susceptible. Ohio State, the offense, number 8 in the nation still in 2-point percentage so far this year. Wisconsin's defense is 172nd in 2-point defense so far this year. So that means Tilly, if he can go. If not, you're looking at Amari Bynum. You're looking at maybe a couple shots by Nagovin. You're absolutely looking at Bruce Thornton and Devin Royal to get inside the 3-point line, find your way into the paint, find your way into the mid-range, find your way into the short corner, and make shots. If Ohio State can do that at a high clip, I think that they're going to have a really good shot to beat Wisconsin, because that's where Wisconsin has been weaker so far. And I think it is a matchup advantage for Ohio State. As good as this Wisconsin team is, and the analytics would say that Ohio State and Wisconsin are pretty similar at this point, I do see definite areas where Ohio State can win this game, and I don't see as many areas where Wisconsin can win this game. However, the biggest key to the game for Ohio State, this is it. This is what you focus on for 40 minutes. You've got to eliminate the three ball if you are Ohio State's defense. This is probably your moneymaker above anything else for Ohio State in this one. In losses for Wisconsin so far this year, it's very clear that when they don't shoot the 3 ball, they lose. Here's their percentages in their 6 losses this year: 24%, 25%, 22%, 44%, outlier, 16%, and 24%. Those are their losses. And every single loss so far this year, they've shot 25% or worse from deep in other than one game. They've made 10 or less 3-pointers in all of their losses, and 7 or less in 4 of 6 losses. Ohio State, their defense, 26th in the nation in 3-point percentage. That is very good. That is your recipe to winning this game if you're the Buckeyes. Again, we have 2 strengths for Ohio State where Wisconsin is a little bit weaker potentially. In this one, I'm not saying Wisconsin is weak shooting the 3 ball. They're not special. If you look at their numbers across the year, don't worry, I'll grab them. 3-point percentage. I'm looking at losses. I was going to say that can't be right. Full season, 3-point percentage. They're 145th in the nation. So they're going to shoot a lot of them, but they're going to miss some too. So for Ohio State, I think the strength here is their 3-point defense. That's a recipe to winning this game for Ohio State. So let's get into a prediction now in this one. Here's what the BIP says. The BIP has Wisconsin favored at -4.5. Let's check together just for fun to see if we have a number out so far in this game. I'm recording pretty late Friday morning. Apologies for getting this episode to you late, by the way. Just kind of how the morning went. It happens. Please don't be mad at me. So I have Kalshi. What the frick are we doing? Kalshi is the only one with odds up right now, and Wisconsin's favored. I couldn't care. Does anyone like Kalshi? Does anyone? They have all these people on Twitter just posting stupid things, and once you see that stupid logo on their profile, I'm out. I'm out. No offense. I think like Mr. Ohio, or there's some like big. I'm not gonna find it. I don't care enough. There's some big Ohio State Twitter account that is sponsored or whatever by Kalshi. Just we can do better, I think, as a society as a whole. But the BIP says Wisconsin's going to be favored by 4.5. Sees the over under at 155.5. I would lean over on the 155 or 151.5. So, how does Ohio State win this game? If the Buckeyes are going to win this game as very, very short underdogs, how do they do it? Well, here's the first thing. Ohio State, the schedule makers have not been the most mean to the Buckeyes in terms of Big Ten play. Now, it's very, very hard to get visits scheduled because in high school play, you're playing on Friday night. If you're going to get to Ohio State, there's a player I just spoke to yesterday who wants to take a visit to Ohio State, but he can't during the season because the one opportunity that Ohio State had, it's gone. And outside of that, you're playing on Friday or Sunday, and it just makes it really, really hard to get a visit in and still be able to get back for school, if that's what you care about, or games or whatever the case may be, practice and all that. The good thing, though, Ohio State has had a couple games this year where they've had a nice rest advantage. In this one, they have a +2 day advantage. Wisconsin just played on Wednesday night. Ohio State hasn't played since Monday. So because of that, the Buckeyes are going to have a little bit of an advantage here overall in terms of rest. They still don't have the advantage in depth, but it is something worth noting. You look at what Minnesota just did for 15-ish minutes against Wisconsin a couple nights ago. If Minnesota can do that, why can't Ohio State? What reason do we have to say that Ohio State can't actually hold the lead and finish? I don't know. Just because Ohio State can doesn't equal that they will. Minnesota is not better than Ohio State, but that doesn't mean Ohio State gets lucky against a Wisconsin team that just can't make a shot in the first half. So we'll see about that. But look, Ohio State's 3-point defense, other than the last game they just played against Penn State, it's been really, really good of late. Against Michigan, the Wolverines only made 5 triples. Against Minnesota, the Golden Gophers made 8. UCLA made 9 on them. And Washington made just 6 on them. They're allowing just 7.4 3-pointers made per game. So that said, Ohio State absolutely has the formula. They have the strengths to beat a Wisconsin team. Their strength is better than Wisconsin's strengths. Here's what I'll say. These are two teams that so far this year, they're winning the games that they're supposed to win, and they're losing the games that they're supposed to lose. You're looking at Wisconsin 3-point happy offense against a defense that has emphasized a 2-3 zone. It's extended, so they don't really give up as many threes as you would expect on just a typical 2-3 zone, but it does kind of force you to give up some threes at times. As much as I've said that I can see so many different ways for Ohio State to win this game, here's what I'll say. What my heart says, my brain just keeps yelling at me literally as I continue to convince myself and say, the numbers are here. The path is there for Ohio State to win. What I can't stop thinking about is Ohio State is winning the games that they should win, and they're losing the games that they should lose. That's exactly what Wisconsin is doing as well. Let's just look at Wisconsin's losses. Against BYU, they lost. BYU's better. Against TCU, they lost. That's your outlier. Against Nebraska and Villanova, they lost those games. Both those teams higher in KenPom. Purdue, yeah, you should have lost that game. USC, should you have lost that game? Should you have not? They're really, really close. So I don't know. So maybe that is the path. Maybe Ohio State and USC, Wisconsin, all very similar, at least in terms of KenPom. That was a home game for Wisconsin. They probably should have won. But a lot of these games and the wins that they have, they're winning the games that they should have won. Other than, of course, Michigan. You have some outliers, but for the most part, that's what Wisconsin has done this year. You look at Ohio State. They beat Notre Dame. They should have. They lost to Pitt. Probably should have won that game. Lost to Illinois. They should have lost. Beat was Northwestern. They beat them. Lost to North Carolina. Probably should have lost. Nebraska. Lose. Should have. Washington probably should have won. It is what it is. UCLA should have won. Technically, they did. Beat Minnesota, beat Penn State when you should have, lost to Michigan when you should have. So all that said, I can't stop thinking about that. And again, I can even see in the past couple games where Wisconsin probably should have beat USC at home, and they didn't. And yet I can't keep myself from picking Wisconsin at home over the Buckeyes on the road. I do think that once Wisconsin comes to Columbus, I think these two teams split. But right now, I can't convince. I don't know why. I cannot convince myself to take Ohio State in this game. So I'm picking Wisconsin to win. I hope I'm wrong. However, I lean, if the spread is 4.5 or 5.5, I'm not putting money on it, at least at this point. I like Ohio State to cover the spread in this game. I think it's going to be tight. And I think Ohio State very easily could win this game. So we shall see. Expect a show probably Saturday-ish or Sunday to recap Ohio State against Wisconsin, and then we'll get back at it next week for a new week of Buckeye Hoops. Appreciate you being here. Again, if you've been here this whole way, please give a 5-star review, like the video on YouTube, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Hope you have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, and until next time, I shut up before you shut me off. Go Bucks.